Two sisters headed to the mall on a hot Friday afternoon in Ashford, Oregon. They lived less than a mile away. Summer break had just started, and they had a couple bucks in their pockets for pizza and ice cream. Their mom figured they'd be home before dark. They never made it back. There were witnesses, there were tips, and there was even a guy who came forward saying he saw exactly what happened. For almost 30 years, nobody realized that witness was actually the killer. Ashford, Oregon, June 18, 1988. It was the kind of town where kids rode their bikes all day and parents didn't worry much. Serious crime just wasn't something people thought about. David Carter worked as a local radio host, and his wife Helen was an elementary school teacher. Their daughters, Emma and Chloe, were known all around the neighborhood. Emma was 13, smart, mature for her age, always looking out for her little sister. Chloe was 11, funny, energetic, and usually right behind Emma wherever she went. Around 1:15 that afternoon, the girls left home and started walking toward Ashford Center Mall. A few neighbors saw them crossing the street, laughing and talking. Everything looked normal. Inside the mall, people were shopping, kids were hanging out. Music was playing over the speakers. Around 2 p.m., several people noticed the sisters talking to a middle-aged man. He looked professional, friendly, confident. He carried a black briefcase and claimed he was a photographer working on a local magazine. He told the girls they might be perfect for a feature story. Nobody thought anything of it. About an hour later, a restaurant worker saw Emma and Chloe eating pizza in the food court. They looked relaxed, happy. Nothing seemed wrong. That was the last confirmed time anyone saw them alive. By 6 p.m., Helen Carter started getting worried. By 7, she was calling friends and neighbors. By 8, David and several volunteers were searching the streets with flashlights. At 8:37 p.m., police officially opened a missing persons case. Search teams worked through the night. Tracking dogs followed the girls' scent through the parking lot before suddenly losing it near a service road behind the mall. The trail just stopped. Detectives immediately feared the worst. Over the next few days, hundreds of volunteers joined the search. Missing person flyers went up all over Oregon. News stations covered the story nonstop. Every lead got checked. Most went nowhere. Then about a week later, a 22-year-old drifter named Richard Morris walked into a police station. He said he'd seen an abduction. According to him, 2 girls had been forced into a dark blue van by an unknown man. He described the van. He described the suspect. He even claimed he heard the girls crying for help. At first, detectives took him seriously. But the more they questioned him, the more problems showed up. His timeline kept changing. His details didn't match. His story kept falling apart. A polygraph suggested he wasn't telling the truth. Eventually, Richard admitted he'd made the whole thing up. He said he wanted attention. Police labeled him a liar and moved on. His statement got filed away and forgotten. Years went by, then decades. The Carter family never stopped looking for answers. Birthdays passed, holidays passed. The girls' bedrooms stayed exactly the same. Hope faded, but it never completely disappeared. In 2016, a cold case unit reopened the investigation. Detectives went through every report from the beginning. Thousands of pages, hundreds of interviews. One name kept popping up: Richard Morris. Investigators tracked him down living under a different identity in another state. He was older now, sick, and a lot less confident than he used to be. For months, detectives kept talking to him. At first, he denied everything. Then, little by little, his story started changing. The truth finally came out. Richard had approached the girls at the mall. He gained their trust, then convinced them to leave with him. He took them to an abandoned farmhouse outside Ashford. Years later, forensic investigators searched the property. Hidden beneath several layers of paint in the basement, they found traces of blood. The evidence was old and damaged, but it supported what detectives were hearing. According to Richard, the girls were killed shortly after arriving there. A few days later, he moved the remains deep into the woods near Black Pine Ridge. There, he built a massive fire using old tires, fuel, and scrap wood. The fire burned for nearly 2 days. At the time, local residents remembered seeing smoke in the area. Nobody thought much about it. In 2018, investigators searched the site. Forensic teams carefully sifted through the ashes. They found burned clothing fragments, melted metal, and tiny pieces of bone. Too much time had passed for complete identification. But the evidence matched Richard's account. Finally, in October 2019, Richard Morris stood in court. More than 30 years after Emma and Chloe Carter disappeared. The courtroom was silent. David and Helen sat in the front row, older now, tired, still carrying photos of the daughters they'd spent decades searching for. Richard pleaded guilty to 2 counts of murder. The sentence guaranteed he'd spend the rest of his life behind bars. There was no celebration, no cheers, just relief. A painful chapter had finally come to an end. Outside the courthouse, reporters asked David how he felt. He paused for a moment before answering. "We waited 31 years for the truth. We wish it would have come sooner, but we're grateful it finally came." Today, Black Pine Ridge is quiet. Most people passing through have no idea what happened there. But the story of Emma and Chloe Carter lives on, not because of how they died, but because their family never stopped searching. And because sometimes the truth survives long enough to be found, even when everybody thinks it's gone forever.